Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 26th of October 2020. Just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. Your host today, Mike Robinson, myself, Brian Gerrish. We're delighted to be joined by David Scott, bringing us northern exposure from north of the border.
Lockdown deaths. It's starting to hit the mainstream. This is a Telegraph. Second lockdown spells an unprecedented non-COVID health crisis. And of course, this is what we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks in particular. We've been asking whether the lockdown deaths that we saw in April would be replicated this winter. So they're saying that all theoretical models are wrong. Some are just less wrong than others. Cast your minds back to March. Professor Neil Ferguson's now infamous estimation of 500,000 deaths had just thrown the government into disarray, despite similar apocalyptic predictions in Sweden of 85,000 deaths. Their government held their nerve. Their total is of just under 6,000 fatalities, shines an unflattering light on Ferguson's predictions. Sweden's overall excess mortality is lower than many countries, and while positive results skyrocket on most of the continent, the Swedes are on a milder trajectory. Well, that's saying something. Now, it goes on to say that when you look back years from now, we can fully understand the true extent of lockdown's damage. History will not be kind. Our society torn in half, a shattered economy, and a non-COVID health crisis unlike anything we've ever seen. Other mainstream articles highlighting this as well. So here's the Mail. Lockdown's lethal toll laid bare. 50,000 children see surgery postponed, and so on is their headline. So let's just look at the main points that they're making here. Yes, 50,000 child operations cancelled in England. Stroke treatment down by 45%. Endoscopies down by nearly 90%. Accident and emergency presentation halved. Weekly cancer detection reduced by 58%. And, this is pretty spectacular figures. And we just remind you of our graphic that we've been showing, that at the moment there is no excess mortality. Now, our argument from the beginning has been that the lockdown, which began in week 13 of this year, began the process of excess mortality. And the question then is that what we're going to see this winter as well? So I'm going to add the word yet on the end. It's not clear exactly how this is going to pan out, but unless more people start talking about what caused the excess mortality in the spring, then unfortunately I foresee the likelihood of the same thing happening this winter, Brian.
Yeah, well, and I'm going to add something to this, Mike, and it's my personal opinion. I may be unpopular for it, but the government absolutely knew what it was doing when it put the lockdown into place. It knew what it was doing when it put the elderly people who had COVID into the nursing homes and the care homes and locked them down and denied the medical treatment. The government knew they're culpable. It was murder. And that will occur this winter if the same routine follows.
Very quickly, David, have you got any thoughts on this? Welcome to the programme.
It's remarkable, Mike, that listening to the mainstream media today is like listening to the UK column in May. Five months late, but they're getting there.
Well, possibly. They're still quite schizophrenic in general. So anyway, let's move on to this then quickly. This is an article from Germany, from Der Tagesspiegel, and let's give a quick translation of it. The Bundeswehr could be sent abroad for COVID-19 missions. They're saying around 160 Bundeswehr specialists could help with a NATO emergency plan in the corona pandemic. In addition to Germany, 4 other countries have agreed, and the 4 other countries include the United Kingdom. A spokesperson for the German Defense Ministry confirmed that they had promised NATO support for its emergency plan, which is called Allied Hand. According to this, medical personnel, pioneers, that's a bad translation perhaps, and experts from troops will be made available for deployments abroad to ward off nuclear, biological or chemical dangers. Not quite sure how this is related to COVID-19, but that's the banner that it's being put under. The emergency plan should be activated, for example, if the health system in ally or NATO partner countries such as Ukraine, Georgia or Sweden threatens to collapse due to the very high numbers of infections. So they include Sweden in this, surprisingly. We mentioned the NATO defence ministers meeting on Friday's programme, and Jens Stoltenberg was asked about this Operation Allied Hand, and his answer was, "I'm not familiar with what you refer to." But then he was asked a bit more. The questioner said, German newspapers report that there's a NATO emergency plan called Allied Hand, and that several nations have committed, amongst them Germany. Let me check, Germany and others, medical personnel, engineering capacities, capabilities and experts in order to support COVID-19 response. And the German newspapers mentioned that there are 4 nations, UK and France, among them contributing to that mission. And suddenly his tone changed somewhat, and he said, yeah, well, if you're referring to the operational plan we've established for assisting allies with the pandemic, COVID-19, then we have a plan. And he went on to say, anyway, that doesn't matter so much. The one thing that matters, the thing that matters, and NATO encourages, and which also will be addressed at the meeting this week, is that our militaries help civilian health services, the civilian authorities, to deal with the pandemic. And this is very interesting, Brian and David, because this idea of military and civilian cooperation and collaboration is something that he promoted a number of years ago at a European Defence Agency conference along with Federica Mogherini, but it's something that we're starting to see on Britain's streets. So here is the Telegraph again, and the headline is, Army drafted in to help with COVID response in Tier 3 areas to combat a second peak of infections. And this, according to the Telegraph, is coming under the Military Aid to Civil Authorities, MACA, which covers the provision of military to support the civil power, various government agencies, community at large, is provided on an emergency basis and fielded from what they describe as irreducible spare capacity. Now, the definitions for all this and how it can be used can be found in this document, Operations in the UK. This is from the Ministry of Defence, and it's, Operations in the UK, the Defence Contribution to Resilience. So let's just have a look at what this says about MACA. It says this, military aid to civil authorities, MACA, covers the provision of military support to the civil power, OGDs, and the community at large. The support is provided on an emergency basis and fielded from irreducible spare capacity. It also includes support to the maintenance of government in times of crisis and conflict. It then goes on to say this, and this is the key thing, military aid should always be the last resort. And, well, David, I'm not seeing any evidence whatsoever to suggest that the government has run out of options, has investigated all possible options for providing additional capacity for the so-called COVID pandemic, if there even is a pandemic at this point, which my earlier graphic suggests there absolutely is not. So bearing in mind that military aid should always be the last resort, and bearing in mind that this policy seems to be not just a UK policy, but an international policy through NATO of military supporting civil authorities. I wonder what your thoughts are on this.
It's very troubling. The international aspect of this, particularly so, because questionable enough, though the presence of our own troops on our own streets, engaging in policing and civil control over our population is, the idea that we're now looking at an international body moving international troops across borders to do the same thing with the endorsement of the government, but not necessarily the people, is doubly worrying. And then when you factor in the continuity of government aspect of this, there's nothing there that gives me a warm and fuzzy feeling.
Yeah, Brian?
Well, exactly. And I'm going to say that the UK column over many years pointed a finger at the militarisation of British police, the joint training exercises with Europol, the setting up of training systems with them. We've even had the British police going to Israel to be trained for whatever reason, but we've seen the militarisation of the police, and now we're seeing the military brought in on the streets. This is very dangerous. It's very dangerous, as you say, David, if we've now got foreign or the idea that we could get foreign army units on the streets in UK. Do I think they're heading there? Yes, I do. I absolutely do.
Well, let's look at what was going on at the weekend then. And well, the BBC here, COVID-19 arrests at London anti-lockdown protest. 18 people were arrested according to the BBC. Large crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace where the police were stationed before moving on to Trafalgar Square. Some protesters carried placards calling for freedom and an end to the tyranny of COVID-19 restrictions. The Metropolitan Police said the crowds had been dispersed but urged people to continue social distancing. There was some disruption on Westminster Bridge. Well, was there any justification once again for this type of police action? Thank you very much to the people that sent me through the Angus Lancaster sent me this video through. Well, it doesn't look like there was any particular justification for any police intervention there, Brian. It looked like that was a very well-behaved and positive protest.
Yeah, and of course that makes it very, very difficult for the authorities, because if the protests stay perfectly peaceful, it's obvious who's causing the trouble, isn't it?
Yes. David?
No Gestapo policing was one of the signs that passed there. I thought that was very interesting. You're looking at a happy crowd there. You're looking at a lot of smiling faces. It's as diverse as it possibly can be. It's all types and ages and colours and persuasions of people, and they're out there saying we want to be free. And the police action that I've seen on video was exceptionally aggressive and nasty and amounted to little more than assault.
But of course, what did the BBC focus on? They didn't make any of the points you've just made.
No, I would imagine they wouldn't.
No, indeed. Well, look,
nor were they out integrating with these people and talking to them, interviewing them to find out what they believed and why they believed it. It simply doesn't happen.
Indeed. So let's move on to this then. Here is William Wragg MP. He's from the Public Administration Constitutional Affairs Committee, and he's saying this. In the effort to fight the spread of COVID-19 and attempt to mitigate its impact on the economy and wider society, the government is aiming to deliver policies that provide a delicate balance between reducing infection spread and allowing the economy to open up. I'm not sure that I've seen much evidence of the government attempting to deliver any policies that provide such a balance at all. But anyway, William Wragg goes on to say, for such policies to be successful, they have to be based on highly accurate and up-to-date data. Well, I think based on the comments that were in the Telegraph that we led off the programme with, there isn't much evidence of that up-to-date data at all. But let's just look at what he is and the Public Administration and Constitutional Affairs Committee are asking for, because they're now have opened up a consultation on this. So they're asking for evidence. Did the government have good enough data to make decisions in response to coronavirus, and how quickly were government able to gather new data? Was data for decision making sufficiently joined up across departments? Was relevant data disseminated to key decision makers in central and local government, other public services like schools, businesses and interested members of the public? Now, I have to say that there's a few interesting aspects to these questions, because of course sufficiently joined up across departments, this is referring to the fusion doctrine, which we've been talking about for quite some time, a whole of government approach to decision making and policy making. This is a change in the way that we're governed, a very significant change, and perhaps this call for evidence is really looking for data to back that change up. But it goes on. Were key decisions such as lockdowns underpinned by good data, and was data-led decision-making timely, clear and transparently presented to the public? Was data shared across the devolved administrations and local authorities to enable mutually beneficial decision-making? So there's no question about whether there should be devolution or whether the devolved administrations should be making some of these decisions. it's just presumed, but was the data good enough for that? Is the public able to comprehend the data published during the pandemic? Because the public may not be able to comprehend data at all, Brian, you know. Is there sufficient understanding among journalists and parliamentarians to enable them to present and interpret data accurately? I think the public probably understands the data a heck of a lot better than the journalists and the parliamentarians.
Well, and there have been a lot of informed questions asked of government. They're simply not replying. They're simply just giving the line.
Indeed. And does the government have a good enough understanding of data security, and do the public have confidence in the government's data handling? How will the change in responsibility for government data impact future decision making? And so this consultation is only open for another couple of days, and any responses need to go back to Claire Hardy, and the details are on the screen there with an email address and a telephone number. But the question then is the data out there? David, now the UK Columnist has an article on it on the front page at the moment with a lot of data from Freedom of Information requests, and we now have another Freedom of Information request and answers to give to people.
Yes, I thought this was very interesting, and it shows just how useful the actions by our viewers are in revealing what's really going on. So this is an FOI request to Buckinghamshire Healthcare NHS Trust. It's covering the period up to the 30th of August, and it asks, how many COVID-19 patients are you treating at hospitals in the trust? And the answer is none. How many of these patients are in intensive care units? Answer, none. What's the total number of beds in the trust? And the answer is 376. How many are occupied? 327. So that makes it absolutely clear that as of August, there was no COVID in that part of the country. And the more data we can get like this, the more we will be able to hold the lying politicians to account and show them what's really happening on the ground, and that will defeat the lies.
It will indeed. Now, the only limitation of freedom of information, of course, is the delay that there is in getting the responses back. But I think it's still a tool that we can use effectively, David.
It is. I mean, you have the 21 days delay. Everything's a little bit like looking in the rearview mirror, but nonetheless, it produces vast amounts of data, and it's tremendously useful. So I would encourage people who are listening to engage with the local health board and send us the results.
Now, we were talking about the military a minute ago, but things perhaps not all hunky-dory within the military itself.
Yes, so this is from the Defence Net. As COVID-19 health protection measures have been put in place for you and your unit's protection to enable you to do your job. But there are too many instances of these measures being unnecessarily ignored across the army, particularly in barracks and headquarters. While it is everyone's responsibility to comply, the chain of command must enforce the measures found in the COVID-19 health protection instruction version 10.2. If you see the measures are not being enforced, 1, encourage colleagues to follow the guidance. So we're looking for some peer pressure there. 2, inform your chain of command. So I think that's possibly not going to go down too well in the army if you are spending your time informing on your mates.
I'd say it with a smile on my face, it won't be, David, it definitely won't be.
No, indeed. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the Liverpool gym owner that was refusing to close during the lockdown. He was pretty heavily fined as a result of that. And of course, we had armed police going to try to enforce that closure.
Yes, so this is another happy story. We don't have that many of those to go around. So the gym owner, he was fined. He faced up to the armed police. He remained calm. He remained polite. He remained resilient, and he fought against the oppression. And the people who were watching this responded, and a crowd fundraiser provided £52,000. So he says, all we're trying to do is save the physical and mental health of our city, region, of our country. We stand united. We have everyone behind us, and we have a select few trying to derail this right now. Guys, we cannot let this happen. We are part of the solution, not of the problem. You need to stand with us. The fight goes on. So this is what he said as he was being threatened with essentially unlimited fines accumulating quickly. And very quickly, the government found a reverse gear And well, he can open now. So this is Sky News reporting here. He doesn't need his £53,000 he got in donations. He hopes to give it away because the decision's been reversed. He can open up. All the gyms in the area can open up. He said he's elated and relieved, and he's thanking the public for their huge win. But of course, this report identifies other areas of the economy, in this case soft play areas, who have got the same problem. They're being threatened with the same restrictions, the same threats of fines, and they're not being allowed to open. And there's no more justification for that either. So the fight goes on.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, David. We often get people writing to us or speaking to us and saying, can you give us more good news in the UK column, because a lot of what you report is very tough stuff. And that particular episode you've just described is a classic example of where people take local action. They say, no, we're not accepting this. They do something positive. They donate their money or they give support in other ways. We see a result occurring. That is good news. So the simple message, I think, for our viewers and listeners is that where you take the right action locally, and there's a lot of people get involved, you can stop this monster that's trying to install itself in the country. So I'm going to say that's a good news story, but there could be a lot more of these if people took action locally.
It also shows the power of video. The camera phone is our greatest weapon, because they had video of the armed police standing looking threatening, and the video of the gym owner explaining his case calmly and simply and rationally, and the contrast was very powerful.
It was announced today, Boots announced today, that they are soon going to be providing a very quick COVID-19 test. I think it's going to take 19 minutes to get a result. And I think it's going to cost you, I can't remember, 180 quid or something like that to do that. Indeed. But David, we've been in the position of quick tests before.
Yes, so thanks to the viewer who spotted this one. This is a New York Times article from January the 22nd, 2007. And the headline is, Faith in Quick Test Leads to an Epidemic That Wasn't. So this is an interview with the doctor, and look at the situation as follows. For months, nearly everyone involved in the medical centre had a huge, thought the medical centre had a huge whooping cough outbreak with extensive ramifications. Nearly 1,000 health workers in the hospital in Lebanon, New Hampshire, were giving a preliminary test and furloughed from work until the results were in. 142 people, including Dr. Herndon, were told they appeared to have the disease. Thousands were given antibiotics and vaccine for protection. Hospital beds were taken out of commission, including some in intensive care. Then, about 8 months later, healthcare workers were dumbfounded to receive an email message from the hospital administration informing them the whole thing was a false alarm. As it turned out, not a single case of whooping cough was confirmed with the definitive test, growing bacterium Bordetella pertussis in the lab. Instead, it appears that the healthcare workers probably were afflicted with ordinary respiratory diseases like the common cold. Dr. Kathy A. Petty, an infectious disease specialist at the University of Utah, said the story had one clear lesson. Quote, the big message is that every lab is vulnerable to having false positives, Dr. Petty said. Continuing the quote, no single test result is absolute, and that is even more important with a test result based on PCR.
Which, of course, is exactly the test that's being used generally for COVID-19. Now, I'm fascinated by this because, of course, what that said there was, it said that it appears the healthcare workers probably were afflicted with an ordinary respiratory diseases like the common cold. Here we are heading into a winter season. We've got the Public Health England no longer providing a weekly report on COVID-19 statistics. Those are now being rolled in with influenza, which is making it extremely difficult for bodies like the Office for National Statistics to actually separate between those. And of course, if you mash everything up like that, you just end up with, well, you can generate any narrative you like out of it. It becomes very, very difficult for people to get hold of actual data that's meaningful. But this article demonstrates that this type of thing has happened before. They're playing the same card.
Yes, let's not pretend that we don't know what the problem is. Unreliable testing and media hype and government overreaction generates actions which are completely unnecessary and which will be shown to be completely unnecessary later on. But by that point, the damage is done. Now, it's not just the damage in case of partially closing down one hospital. This is damage that's partially closing down the entire country.
Well, yeah, the government agenda, David, let's have a look at this Daily Mail article here, which was sent to me. The key bit is sponsored by UK government. So here's the headline: NHS COVID-19 app, everything you need to know about how, when and where it works. Who's written it? Anonymous person in the UK government. So this is propaganda. It should have a propaganda label on it. It doesn't. I was fascinated at the end of the article. It said this is the UK government information for readers in England only. So I thought there might be a few constitutional issues there somewhere, but that was just an aside. People are mentioned. So these are the people speaking for the government. So we've got a Professor Christoph Fraser, University of Oxford. So he's a professor of pathogen dynamics at Nuffield Department of Medicine, and he's been an independent advisor on the epidemiology of coronavirus throughout the app production. So he's a key man in this. He's a key government man. The government trusts him enough to use him as a spokesperson. Then we've got our old favourite Dr. Amir Khan, TV doctor. I think he also must do a bit of fashion modelling there. He said he was nervous at first, but the app has already worked for me. Well, it would, because clearly I don't think he thinks a lot. Resident GP on ITV's Good Morning Britain has seen firsthand how the NHS COVID-19 app can help protect patients and health workers. So this is a total propaganda piece for the government on the app. But let's just focus in on this man and what he said. So Professor Christoph Fraser, the more people who use it, the more effective it will be. Countries like Germany and New Zealand were able to keep mortality low throughout the first wave, and with a combination of the app and manual contact tracing, they're now controlling the epidemic.
What epidemic?
I'm sorry, what did I say?
No, I'm just saying, what epidemic?
Oh, what epidemic?
Yeah.
Yes. Right. Well, David, just the words of that. So countries like Germany and New Zealand were able to keep mortality low throughout the first wave. That's one statement. And then you conflate it. And with a combination of the app and manual contact tracing, they're now controlling the epidemic. But if it was low in the first place, it's already happened, isn't it?
It's nice, sneaky language. It's very
crafted. This is crafted language.
Crafted. That's a good word. Yes, it's to create a particular impression that is clearly not borne out by the facts. Cannot be, because otherwise they would make it in a factual way.
Yep. So let's carry on through. The app has been extensively tested. It was developed with Google and Apple engineers. Therefore, you needn't worry, people. Google and Apple are involved. You can be rest assured. And leading scientists who really focused on getting the measurements right, so you won't get a notification from a person walking down the street, just extended close contact. So really, he's warning people that this app is going to get right to the heart of your private life. There are going to be no secrets.
Yeah, but this again is at the very least disingenuous, if not complete misinformation and fake news, because it was developed with Google and Apple engineers. Well, let's get this right. What Google and Apple did was that they placed a framework on their phones on which people could develop apps. The government's initial approach had been not to use Google and Apple's framework, but to try to do it themselves using a centralized server where they could hoover up all the data for themselves. Google and Apple, at Apple's behest, put protections in that to stop that kind of thing happening. Now, it turned out that the NHS was not able to make their system work, so they then went back cap in hand to Google and Apple and said, we want to use your framework after all. So the implication here is that Google and Apple helped the government. No, the government wanted to go their own way. They cocked it up and then they went back and asked for assistance.
Right. Well, okay, let's follow it through with the next bit. The privacy of this app is such that it cannot enforce self-isolation because it does not know who or where you are. However, the only other choice to slow the spread is local or national lockdowns, which are indiscriminate and unfair. When you receive a request to self-isolate, you're doing your bit. This is more conflated subjects here, but it cannot enforce self-isolation. This is an algorithm at work here, but we're being led to believe that this is actually a thought process going on. Well, who is this man? Let's have a little look at what they said. Well, they did say that he was part of Nuffield Department of Medicine. That link was declared, but they didn't declare the link with Big Data Institute from Oxford University. And why do we need to look at that? Because of the people involved. So we've got at the bottom end the Medical Research Council, maybe that's fair enough. We've got the British Heart Foundation, maybe that's fair enough. We've got the Higher Education Funding Council, maybe that's okay. But then we've got the Robertson Foundation. So I don't know whether any of the team here know who the Robertson Foundation is. I didn't. We've got Wellcome. I think we know which that one is. We're into the heart of the big pharmaceutical beast there. And we've got the Lai Ka-shing Foundation. So who are they? Well, let's have a look at a couple of these. This is Robertson Foundation. It's a family hedge fund sort of affair. It was a hedge fund. That money is now apparently being used for the good of the world. But it's a family affair, Julian Joseph and a Josian family, and the Tiger Foundation and the Aurora Foundation and a few others, which are not actually declared, or I didn't find them. What does it look like? Well, this is what it looks like. So these people have got some foot in the door with deeply sensitive NHS data, it would appear. What are they? Well, they're very wealthy people who've played around with hedge funds. But here they are in the middle of COVID-19 crisis because the Tiger Foundation has got its own response. So the question I have, and I suggest the audience need to have, who are these people and who invited them to get involved in serious matters concerning the health of the UK public? Well, here's the Li Ka-shing Foundation, building the good of science. We seek to inspire societal improvement through supporting education and healthcare initiatives. Well, all that sounds okay. What are they up to? Well, they're worldwide. So this is one of their maps showing where they're active, and they're there in Canada and the United States and UK and Israel and out in the Far East and Australia. But the next one takes the biscuit because this is activity inside China. So now we've got an evidence trail which is showing that this huge foundation, apparently the second largest private foundation after Bill and Melinda Gates, has got a foot in the Chinese doorstep, or on the Chinese doorstep, as well as the UK and the Western world. So what exactly is their interest in UK NHS big data? And of course the article daren't even mention them because now we're getting down the path of who's really controlling what's going on with COVID-19.
Okay, now if you like what the UK Column does and you would like to support us, then please head over to ukcolumn.org/community. There are options to help us out there. A couple of new articles to let you know about. First of all, Ian Davis here has written Wastewater Waste, the official COVID-19 narrative, and this is much more detail on the topic that I was talking about on Friday's news programme with respect to the use of the government monitoring of our poo to discover how widely COVID-19 is progressing through society. Also from Alex Thompson here, what is a COVID-19 marshal? And if you want to understand that, then please go and read those. Both those articles, very important. Please share them as widely as possible. And also, David, the latest Northern Exposure video.
Yes, the fifth and for the moment the final one in the Samantha Baldwin interview series brings the story up to date and goes through some of the evidence that's come to light in relatively recent times after the court hearings. All of this evidence remains ignored, and Samantha remains a lone voice speaking out without any state government or judiciary or police support on behalf of her sons.
Okay, thank you for that. And AV 11.1, Brian, coming up this weekend.
Yes, I encourage people to go to the AV11 site and have a look at the full list of speakers and details on the individual talks being given. But what timing? We've got these tremendous events happening around us, and AV will be there right at the heart of it starting on Saturday evening.
Yes, and we'll just mention that UK Column is facilitating that for Ian Crane, so we're going to be busy all next weekend with AV 11.1. We're not going to do a news programme on Monday the 2nd of October, therefore.
In order to recuperate.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes, and David, then finally, just to let people know of an upcoming demonstration.
Yes, 7th November 2020 at 12:30 Holyrood Park. This is a demonstration to save the hospitality industry, the businesses and the jobs in Scotland. And just a few moments before we came live, I got an invite from the organisers to ask me to speak at this one. So anyone who wants to hear that, please come along.
Okay.
Oh, and there'll be many better speakers as well, including Ms. Cahill from Ireland and many other people who know a great deal about the crisis we're facing. So yes, please join us all for that.
Okay, look forward to that, and that is on the 7th of November at Holyrood. Good stuff. Let's move on then to this, and this is the I newspaper. US election marks a reckoning for social media, but the crackdowns are a sign of fear, not altruism. So they're saying that big tech's efforts to quash fake news and misinformation are a response to regulations that might be imposed if they fail. In reality, fake news is nothing new, but it took the 2016 US presidential election to bring it to the world's attention. False articles with explosive headlines, such as FBI agents suspected in Hillary email leaks found dead, conspiracy theories and doctored images swept across Facebook, Twitter and Google. Western security experts blame Russian operatives. Most believe they manipulated social network users in an attempt to sway the US election towards the ultimate victor, Donald Trump, despite Kremlin denials. Big tech has gone to great lengths to acknowledge its past shortcomings and is keen to avoid another reputational battering in 2020. Facebook, Twitter and Google were among the major tech names to announce in August they were working closely with the US government agencies to protect the integrity of the election. Well, they quote this gentleman, Justin Fear, who's from an organization called Darktrace, and he's saying in the next 12 months we're going to see major tech reforms either proposed or actually acted on. He said if you use the war on terror as an example, these platforms would never allow an Al-Qaeda training manual to be uploaded, but other groups have been allowed to remain until very recently. So that's a statement from Darktrace. Now, who is Darktrace? This is them. They are a self-learning cyber AI for your dynamic workforce company. They provide all the cyber protection for all kinds of companies, including the National Health Service and so on. Well, they're a very exciting company. They're a bit like Serco, Brian. You know, they have this kind of reach.
The biggest company you've never heard of.
Indeed. So eBay, T-Mobile, Micron, Rolls-Royce, Samsung, and so on down the bottom. As I say, the NHS is in there as well, and they're a very interesting organization. So let's have a look at who is involved with them. Here's Lord Evans this is their advisory board. Lord Evans of Weirdeal, former Director General of MI5 from 2007 to 2013, spent 33 years with MI5. He was appointed to the House of Lords in 2014 on the personal recommendation of the Prime Minister and sits as a crossbench peer. Now, he's also the chair of the Committee for Standards on Standards in Public Life, and they are at the moment looking into the electoral process in the UK, because of course the Russians weren't just allegedly manipulating the US election, they were also allegedly manipulating past elections in the UK, including the Brexit referendum. So there is a big effort to look at the Electoral Commission, its role, and the kinds of money that are being spent on UK elections. And he is in charge of that investigation, but he also is sort of head of the advisory board for this organisation Darktrace, which is busy making statements on this situation. Who else is on here? Professor Nick Jennings, Vice President for Research and Enterprise at Imperial College London, responsible for promoting, supporting and facilitating their research performance and for leading on the delivery of research and enterprise strategy. So this man probably pretty heavily involved in the nonsense models which were used to justify lockdown. Who else have we got here? Alan Wade had a 35-year career in the Central Intelligence Agency, where he latterly served as Chief Information Officer before retiring in 2005. Who else have we got? The Right Honourable Amber Rudd, of course, former Home Secretary, lost her seat in October 2019. Well, former Home Secretary, what else can we say about her? She is on the advisory board. And Mike Lynch, OBE, probably one of the richest people in the UK, having pioneered 3 of the biggest success stories in UK tech. He eventually sold one of his companies to Google, I think it was, for it was THP, sorry, apologies, for $11 billion in 2011. So a pretty wealthy guy. So that's their advisory board. Well, of course, what we do have to remember is that this whole censorship agenda with respect to social media was begun by the British government. And here we have an organisation absolutely in the middle of that, also heavily organised by past British government figures. And well, it's not sinister. A coincidence.
It's sinister, Mike. You look at the connectivity between these people, the power and the vast amounts of money at their disposal. None of this is put on the table in front of the public. It's dangerous, it's sinister.
So just briefly, getting back to the original article, I think they have it right in the sense that social media companies are being pushed into doing this. They're promoting this censorship agenda because they're concerned about the types of regulation that are coming down the pipe in the not too distant future. But it was the British government that started this process by inviting those social media companies into number 10 Downing Street, and Amber Rudd was the person who did that. And they were invited to meet her and to meet Theresa May at the time. And that process has continued since. If you want to know more about that, get on the UK Column website. About a third of the way down the page, you'll see a logo which says censored on it. And that'll take you to a page with a timeline that takes you right the way through the major steps that got us to this point.
Yeah.
What's next?
Get the lid off it. I think next is
Shamirani, is David. Yes, David. The BBC then this morning is pushing out a video clip about Kate Shamirani and her family.
Yes, the BBC, the little charmers that they are, have got a video with Kate Shamirani's son Sebastian criticising her and all of her works, condemning her and all of her works, live on the BBC. And this is meant to be an attack on Kate Shamirani. It's meant to make us all not listen to her. Now, the BBC, of course, being a profoundly atheistic organisation these days, don't know scripture and don't know that if you speak the truth, your opponents will be of your own household, is a bit of advice that's in the book. And as a result, people who are watching this will be unconvinced and will instead look at Kate Shamirani and what she says and judge what she says on its merits. And what does she say? Well, they've put this up, the response. She said she didn't talk about her family, and she was quite right not to do so. She did tell us, quote, "From what I can see, it would appear a conspiracy theorist is actually now anyone who believes something other than what your controllers want them to believe. I find this deeply disturbing," end quote. And I can only agree with that sentiment.
It was a pretty low hit piece, actually.
It was nasty. There was something quite queasy about the whole thing. The use of language was all controlled and all manipulated. There was nothing upfront about it. It didn't come across as the sort of output you get from an organisation that's in good moral health.
Yeah, David, can we just add to that the tactic to get in and get family members at each other's throats, that's been a classic tactic of social services where they've targeted a family to get the children, and we've seen this tactic being used in other government departments. Can you get in and turn the family on itself? One of the key psychological attacks. I suppose in some ways she should be honoured that the BBC thinks she's so dangerous they need to do that.
Indeed. Now, this is just looking for a little bit of comment from you both on this one. This has been tweeted out by the Ministry of Justice this morning. From today, another 28 Crown courts will have the technology to allow vulnerable witnesses and victims to pre-record their cross-examination before trial. All Crown courts will be able to provide this special measure by the end of the year. They say the judge decides on a case-by-case basis whether to pre-record the cross-examination. This decision will be made if a witness or victim is considered vulnerable, for example, a child or someone with a physical disability or mental disorder. They go on to say when this pre-recorded cross-examination takes place at an earlier date to the trial, it's done as close to the time of the offence as possible to help memory recall and support the vulnerable witness or victim to give their best evidence. They say the vulnerable witness or victim is taken to a safe, separate room from where they can answer questions for the cross-examination. The judge, defendant, defence and prosecution are in the courtroom just like in a traditional cross-examination. And finally, they say the recording of this cross-examination is kept and played at the later trial. Pre-recorded cross-examination preserves a defendant's right to a fair trial and reduces stress for the vulnerable witness or victim giving evidence to a full courtroom at trial. Now, I'm going to say I see both sides of this in the sense that obviously some people are, in some cases, vulnerable witnesses, and in those cases they need some form of protection. But I'm not convinced, David, if I start with you, I'm not convinced that this is the answer. Because first of all, how can you possibly cross-examine a witness before the prosecution evidence is given? And expect, because surely the cross-examination is going to rely on some information which may have come out at the trial. And so how can you possibly get a fair trial under those circumstances?
Yeah, this is the question that occurred to me first off, is how can anyone know what questions to ask under those circumstances? It's being done before all the information's in. We have to recognise that the experience of people who are vulnerable going into courts has been often horrendous, as they've been taken apart by cross-examination of a most personal and aggressive type, and something needed to be done. I'm not sure this is it.
Excuse me, what comes into my mind straight away is the family courts, of course, where the long line from the government, the judicial system, has been that these courts need to be secret in order to protect the identity and welfare of the child. But when the trial is taken out of the public eye, because there are no juries present, there are no press, there's nobody actually watching what's happening. The moment you can get the people questioned and there's nobody watching what's going on in a direct sense, then the more the cases can be manipulated. A jury can't pick up the nuances if they're looking at a recorded video of questioning. So it's sold on protecting vulnerable people, but I think the reality over a great many years is that it actually does the opposite.
Right now, David, let's have a look at this. Who's Britain's alleged Prime Minister in waiting? Rishi Sunak. Now, we're very tight for time, so just as quickly as possible, please.
Okay. Thanks to the good people at the Fresh Start Foundation, investigating Boleskine House came on this. So the ferociously intelligent new cabinet minister, the Maharaja of the Dales, it reports here that he's a multimillionaire. He's worked in California, India, and Britain, including for Goldman Sachs. And then it says he went on to set up his own business, Thelemites Partners, a private investment partnership in 2010 with an initial fund of 536 million. So the Financial Times picks this up from a different perspective. Reports Patrick DeGorse, an ex-Merrill Lynch banker who co-founded Children's Investment Fund with Richard Horn, has raised more than $700 million, £446 million for his new hedge fund, Thelemites Partners. So this makes it a huge launch. Then it mentions where the name came from. Thelemy, which derives its name from the utopian abbey described by Renaissance humanist Francois Rabelais in his book The Life of Gargantua and of Pantagruel, will soft close when it hits 1.2 billion. So I thought, okay, that's an interesting choice of name for Rishi's company. What's happening there? So if you go to this book, a couple of interesting points. One, the inscription set upon the great gate of Thelemy included the following: "Gold give us, God forgive us, and from all woes relieve us, that we the treasure may reap of pleasure, and shun whatever's grievous. Gold give us, God forgive us." This gives me a slightly uneasy feeling, to put it mildly, but it got much worse because we then looked at what the people who inhabited the fictional Abbey of Thelemy believed in. It was quite striking. So how the Thelemites were governed and their manner of living, the description was as follows: all their life was spent not in laws, statutes, or rules, but according to their own free will and pleasure. They rose out of their beds when they thought good. They ate and drank and laboured and slept when they had mind to do it and were disposed to do it. None did awake them, none did offer them constraint to eat or drink or on any other thing, for so had Gargantua established it. In all their rule, the strictest tie of their order, there was but one clause to be observed: do what thou wilt. And of course, do what thou wilt is the shorthand for the Thelema religion of Satanist Alistair Crowley. How interesting it is that the Chancellor, who may well be our Prime Minister, names his company after the religion of Satanist Alistair Crowley. I wonder what the significance of that is, gentlemen.
Maybe a question needs to go to the gentleman to actually ask him what he has to say about this. I think we might consider that.
Absolutely.
Okay, a big thank you to the person who sent this to me or alerted me to this one. It's 8 predictions for the world in 2030. It's come from the World Economic Forum, and it was put out by them on their Twitter account. So I've taken some screenshots. They tell us you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. That's reassuring, isn't it? This is how our world could change by 2030. So there's 8 predictions. Let's have a look at them. The first one is you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And I like this one. Whatever you want, you'll rent and it'll be delivered by drone. So this is a really tremendous society that they're talking. Whatever you want, you'll rent. You won't actually own it. It'll come from somebody else and you'll have to pay, and it'll be delivered by a drone. We've really progressed. The US won't be the world's leading superpower. That's number 2. And it says that instead a handful of countries will dominate. And I don't believe that UK was listed in those countries at all.
No, but that's the great power competition that the UK military is talking about. This is why we've got to view the world through the eyes of hybrid perpetual warfare and no separation between war and peace. Yeah, okay. Well, the World Economic Forum's on it. Number 3, you won't die waiting for an organ donor. Why not? Because we are going to be printing new organs. We won't transplant organs, we'll print new ones instead. Nice little look into the minds. You'll eat much less meat, and you're going to be doing that because it'll be an occasional treat, not a staple, and it'll be for the good of the environment and our health.
Number 5, we'll have to do a better job at welcoming and integrating refugees. Why should that be? Because apparently climate change means that 1 billion people will be displaced. So this is all pretty I was going to say apoplectic, but that's the wrong word. You know what I mean. You'll own nothing, you'll be happy. That's the line that's repeated all the time, of course. Polluters will have to pay to emit carbon dioxide. And there'll be a global price on carbon. This will help make fossil fuels history. Number 7, you could be preparing to go to Mars. A nice could be there. You could be sat in your garden. But scientists will have worked out how to keep you healthy in space, the start of a journey to find alien life, ? And number 8, Western values will have been tested to the breaking point. And what's going to happen, checks and balances that underpin our democracies must not be forgotten. And lastly, they say like, comment and share. David, very quickly, that's pretty in your face stuff.
It is reminding me very much of George Bernard Shaw. Under socialism, you would not be allowed to be poor. You'd be forcibly fed, clothed, lodged, taught and employed, whether you liked it or not. If you were discovered that you had not the character and industry enough to be worth all this trouble, you might possibly be executed in a kindly manner. But whilst you were permitted to live, you would have to live well. It's just been modernised for the current day.
It's just been modernised, and the drones have been brought in for a bit of fun. Let's have a look at this little bit of video from the World Economic Forum on global councils, because they're one of the key bodies advising it.
The world in the 21st century faces so many problems which are complicated.
I expect the digital transformation of life to bring huge changes, from science to healthcare to sensors to robotics.
Globalization means that the issues are interdependent with each other across borders. So it's a huge enterprise to deal with that. How do you bring together and bring forward new ideas that have both the depth to deal with the technical issues and the breadth to deal with all the linkages across the world?
The World Economic Forum brings us together, gives us the space to think over issues that are tremendously complicated with experts in other areas.
Everybody is a leader in their own field. We actually learn a lot from them.
We have members from practitioners, regulators, academia, central banks that can really work in an unconstrained environment together.
This is unique. There is no other gathering like this for bringing different perspectives together.
It's a wonderful opportunity to cross-pollinate ideas and come together to look at where we want to go as a society.
And we develop a vision, how could the world look like, and then we derive some other different scenarios so that we can derive some call for actions.
When we come together as a summit, we can grab experts from other parts of the world, from other groups, and really get a better sense of the issue. They're an incubator for all of these different ideas and solutions that global leaders discuss at Davos.
The most interesting conversations are at the intersection of our work.
The trade and investment crowd meets with the crowd on food security and technology and artificial intelligence. And the sum of all of this is what will allow us to then come up with solutions that respond to the integrated challenge we're facing today.
We want to use the World Economic Forum as a real platform to influence the system.
And out of this, partnerships are really starting to build up.
As technology becomes more pervasive, the more scalable the solutions that we build can be.
We can understand the change that's happening. We can shape it to reach the ultimate goal, which is everyone on this planet living in dignity, able to pursue their potential within the boundaries of the natural resources that we have available. That's a big goal. It's very exciting, takes a lot of work, but I think we can get there.
So there we are, Mike. We can go home because these people have got everything in hand. They've got our well-being, our best interests, our future, and the central banks are involved.
Good.
It's good, isn't it? So why can we trust them? Well, let's have a look at their own material. They tell us that the Global Future Council is the world's foremost multi-stakeholder and interdisciplinary knowledge network dedicated promoting innovative thinking to shape a more resilient, inclusive and sustainable future. But the small print is really down at the bottom because it says it's an invitation-only community and members are nominated for a one-year period. So this is a secret club, effectively. Let's have a look at what they got into with our mission. They're very big in helping to produce the Davos Manifesto, leadership and governance. Partners, you must have a look at those yourself, because we're into all sorts of other trusts and foundations and big business. But I happen to notice they're the Centre for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. They've got a Centre for Cyber Security. They've got the key man, Klaus Schwab. He's the only man who gets a headline in this part of the website, but otherwise we've got a lot of these other specially selected world leaders, and they're driving us to the fourth industrial revolution, which they're not actually discussing with us, and they're picking the team of people that are going to do that. So this is part of the page for that section. And I'll just say here that the independence claim is a lie. They say that they adhere to the principles of independence, impartiality, moral integrity and intellectual integrity. Well, they're not independent because they declare that you've got to be selected to be part of the claim. So that's a lie. And if that bit is a lie, I think it's reasonable to suggest that all the other claims are a lie. David, I'll just let you come back on that one point very quickly. These people show themselves for what they are, what they really are, with increasing clarity, I think.
I simply offer, as you're going through there, it occurred to me that a good tagline for the World Economic Forum would be the Tower of Basel meets the Tower of Babel.
Yep, thank you for that. And I'll just end with this one on this segment, that basically the viewer said, but what can we do about this? And this is a common theme, isn't it? When this sort of stuff comes up, it's so big, so powerful. I'm just going to reply to this, that you've got to talk about it. You've got to expose it. You've got to warn others. You've got to research the people and organisations to find the links to the policy that's coming into UK and expose those individuals. I've said here that we're deceiving the public and betraying the Constitution by peddling these malicious foreign power political agendas from the World Economic Forum. You need to expose it, talk about it, but above all, make it personal. It's not AI that's creating this, it's people, and they should be identified, but in a peaceful way.
Right, David, just very quickly then, let's end with this little bit of Scottish news.
Yes, this is information from my colleagues at Fresh Start Foundation. We met with Police Scotland on the 18th of August 2020 to discuss a case which we know as the John Shields case. This is the conclusions from a long presentation we made to the police. Conclusions. Mr. Shields is innocent of any crime. He's been wrongfully convicted. His arrest, itself unlawful, was carried out to enable an illegal home invasion by Perthington Ross Council social workers. His bail conditions, obtained by means of deception and coercion, were used as an excuse for the abduction of his son by Perthington Ross Council. The multi-agency conspiracy that brought about this abuse of the justice process involves Perthington Ross Council, Police Scotland, the Procurator Fiscal's Office, and John Swinney, Deputy First Minister of Scotland. It is essential that in the interest of justice, this matter be rigorously investigated and all criminal wrongdoing prosecuted. The core issue of the sexual, physical and emotional abuse of John Shields Jr. in the Mallard Church of Scotland home must also finally be investigated. As Police Scotland are implicated in these events, and no man can be a judge in his own cause, the investigation should involve officers from outside of Police Scotland. And as was stated in the famous case of Somerset versus Stewart, let justice be done though the heavens fall. That was a summary of a long and detailed case with lots of information that I can't put into the public domain that we made to Police Scotland. 6 weeks later, they replied. The reply did not even mention Perthington Ross Council. And on the 6th of October, the Fresh Start Foundation wrote back to them insisting that Perthington Ross Council be investigated and asking for a meeting with the Chief Constable of Police Scotland. And, well, now this. Perthington Ross Council Chief Executive steps down after just 2 years in the role. Well, that's a surprise. Karen Reid, who's been instrumental in creating the much vaunted Perthington Ross offer, and if you want to know what that is, join us for UK Column News Extra. She's been appointed head of NHS Education Scotland. Council leader Murray said she'll undoubtedly be a loss to Perthington Ross. She's an outstanding chief executive combining hard work with vision. She's joined the NHS Education for Scotland. She's got a very unusual CV for this. She doesn't seem to be particularly qualified compared to the existing incumbent who's in temporary charge of this organisation, or compared to previous holders of this post. But she's got the post anyway, and very surprisingly, she does know John Swinney reasonably well, because she's on a committee here, the COVID-19 Education Recovery Group, which is chaired by Mr. Swinney. So it's just very striking, gentlemen, that when the pressure is brought on the conduct of Perth and Kinross Council, all of a sudden the chief executive decides to seek opportunities elsewhere. I wonder if those two things are in any way connected.
I think we might assume that they are, but of course we may never know. But you did something together with a group of other people who worked extremely hard, and something has happened. So I think this is another example that when we press buttons and do things, we can get a result.
We should leave it there.
We should leave it there. Okay, no final slide?
Oh, well, if you want to, yes, we could do the final slide. David,
I think we should do the final slide. Yes.
Okay. Well, here it is then. You better explain.
Right. So this is a young and healthy woman is walking, presumably in a supermarket, and a grossly morbidly obese woman in a wheelchair with a McDonald's drink and bag is saying from behind her mask, "Put a mask on. You're putting my health at risk." Just one of many examples of the crazy illogicality that is COVID-19 that we're all having to live with daily.
Yes.
And I'll smile and say, if you read the documentation for the World Economic 8 predictions, when they're talking about less meat in the text of the main document, it does actually reassure us we'll still be able to get fast food, but it will be of better quality, allegedly. Good. Soylent Green, probably. We'll leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us. We will be back at the same time on Wednesday. Bye-bye.